you're hearing is the inevitable sound of change happening to this frequency.
It sits on its hands while a major American city drowns before our eyes.
We can talk about a trust that was broken. The promise that our government will be prepared, will protect us, and will respond in a catastrophe.
It is an outrage that we are now being forced to clean up their mess.
We're going to do what we have to do. We will keep our boot on the throat of BP to ensure that they're doing all that is necessary while we do all that is humanly possible to deal with this incident.
The biggest mistake that you could possibly make is to ignore the power of your vote, to ignore the power of your voice. It's in times like this, when statements like these are being made, it's the cozy, feel-good rhetoric, the teleprompter reading, lying, deceitful agendas that are supposed to, in some way or another, pull you off of your task, to make you roll over and say enough is enough. I can't fight anymore. It's the constant penetration of false information and propaganda into the mainstream medias and into your living rooms that will force you to throw your hands in the air and say, I give up. There's just nothing else that I can do. You can bang your head against the wall all day, every day, because you get it. You know about the lies. You know about the deceit. You know about the false transparency, the hope and change that's not working out for you. You know about this rogue administration. You know that the government now owns 60% of this economy. They control 60% of this economy. And at the same time that the campaigning Senator Barack Obama was pointing the finger at the Bush administration and saying that this, what did he say? That they sat on their hands during the Hurricane Katrina catastrophe in the Gulf and they ignored the victims of that crisis. Broken promises. We're going to keep the boot on the throat of BP. We won't tolerate blame from BP executives and the owners and operators of the oil rig in the Gulf that's leaking. We won't tolerate blame and finger pointing. God knows that this presidency has never pointed a finger and never blamed anybody else. But folks, I could go on and on about the lies and deceit, but you get it. You know about it. That's why you listen. From whatever medium you might be listening in today, welcome to the 5-Minute We the People excerpt. I appreciate you joining us. And it means so much to the president to be there, to aid the people and the wildlife and the nature that is affected by the BP oil spill. It's so important that this morning Barack Obama met with the NCAA men's basketball champion Duke Blue Devils at the White House. Keeping up the sports theme, the president and the vice president took a photo op with the U.S. World Cup soccer team and former President Bill Clinton. In the afternoon, they'll deliver remarks about the BP oil spill. Mind you, still not at the scene of the crisis. After taking questions from the press, the president will receive a briefing in the Situation Room, still in the White House in Washington. In the afternoon, the president will hold a bilateral meeting with the president of Liberia in the Oval Office. Later in the afternoon, the president and vice president Michelle Obama and Michelle Obama will host a reception in honor of Jewish American Heritage Month in the East Room. And then it's so important to him to maintain this crisis, to keep the boot on the throat of BP. Then afterward, in the evening, the first family will travel to Chicago, Illinois for a 4-day Memorial Day weekend. It's the power of your vote, folks. It is so important that you realize the power of your vote still exists. It's promised to you by the Constitution of the United States, the very framework that this rogue administration is trampling all over right in front of your face. You see the lies, you see the deceit, you know about it. Throwing my hands up in the air would be very easy to do on a day-to-day basis. My wife looks at me and she says, Stu, you gotta get some sleep. You gotta eat. You gotta stop. You can't just do this 24 hours a day. You gotta I will fight tooth and nail I will stand by my rights, my liberties, my freedoms, my core values that I was raised on. The reasons why my dad went to war, the reasons why so many American casualties, so many families have lost, have given the ultimate sacrifice of their lives and their loved ones' lives to fight for this country and your liberties and your freedoms of speech, and to elect the officials that you feel will properly represent you when they go to Washington. And even on a smaller scale, in your cities, on councils, your mayors, your governors, your state senators, congresspeople, all the way to Washington and to the presidency. But this, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be stood for. A complete reformation, a fundamental transformation of this country is happening bigger than anybody has ever seen in the history of this world. The takeover by government, the enlargement of regulations, legislation that will allow the government now to look into your wallet, to look into your bank accounts, to access your credit card files so they can monitor how big you're growing and when you've become too big. Folks, what I want to stress today is how important 2010 is, how important November of 2010 is, how important it is to become so educated and so in tune with every little bit of information that you can possibly get on these people who are promising you that they're going to go to Washington and represent their constituencies and act on their campaign promises. To not forget who they are, to not forget who they work for, to not forget who they represent. The colors and the stars and the stripes of the American flag are bleeding out of their hearts, seeping out of their pores, and you can see it. And they're not career politicians, and they haven't done this before, and they're not experienced, and they don't know, they haven't been corrupted. They have experience in running businesses, in the capitalist freedoms and liberties, the right to succeed and the right to fail. The right to be in this country from any other place in the world as long as you do it under legal premise. The right to open our arms to those who want to be contributing parts of society when they come here from other parts of the world. The right to drive whatever vehicle I want to drive. The right to own whatever company I want to own. The right to vote is so important, ladies and gentlemen, because all of your freedoms and all of your liberties rest upon the soldiers and the shoulders of those who we put into office. And then rest in turn upon the shoulders of the soldiers who fight for those very freedoms that were given to you by the Constitution of the United States that is being trampled all over by this rogue administration. Folks, your right to vote still exists. The power of your vote is more powerful than any executive order that this administration can put forth, any freedom that they can take from you, any liberty that they can rob you of. Your right to vote is more powerful than any pen that this president owns, and you have to believe it. You can't throw your hands in the air and give up now. You can't roll over and play dead. You can't tell yourself there's nothing you can do. You can't sleep. You can't eat. You can't sacrifice any longer the futures of your children, your grandchildren, and your grandchildren's grandchildren. Over $2 trillion since the inception of this presidency. $13 trillion deficit. That doesn't ride on you. That rides on your kids, on your grandkids, and for generations throughout your family. Folks, I beg you, I implore you, please find any bit of information, any shred of knowledge that you can. Ask questions. Find out who. Find out where they come from. Find out where they lived. Where were they born? How were they raised? Who were their parents? Were they raised with brothers and sisters? We need to know everything about the people that we're putting into office in 2010, and I will not stand for anybody telling me that they, quote-unquote, don't talk politics. Folks, this isn't about politics. This isn't about red. This isn't about blue. This isn't about Democrat. This isn't about Republicans. This is about individual liberties and freedoms that are being taken away from you in front of your very eyes. This November, folks, you have to get out and vote. I'm begging you. Become educated. Do everything that you can. Protect the Constitution of the United States of America by any means necessary.
It's one four-letter word we can still say on the air. At least for now.
VOTE.
Because I'm angry.
I think that's when I'm going to fight.
Earn your right to vent.
Because I want some kind of justice out of it.
By exercising your right to vote.